Minister, just to ask you for an update on the current round of sports capital grant applications for all the sports clubs around the country, and particularly those close to my heart in Kildare, who have applied for the scheme. When can they expect to hear word back? Obviously, I know we have the new system that's very much welcome this year, where the invalids are being looked at, and how those clubs will be dealt with. If you can outline that process as to clubs who are deemed invalid, if they'll have the opportunity to rectify that, the timeline involved, and for clubs who didn't have an opportunity to apply this time but now wish to do so, do you envisage there being another scheme opened up soon after this one?
Minister Griffin.
Could I thank Deputy Hayden for his interest in this subject, as always, and thank him for his constant interaction with me on the Sports Capital Programme. The Sports Capital Programme is the primary vehicle for government support for the development of sports and physical recreation facilities and the purchase of non-personal sports equipment throughout the country. Over the years, the programme has transformed the sporting landscape of the country with new and improved facilities and equipment in practically every community. The 2018 round of the Sports Capital Programme closed for applications in October, with a record 2,337 applications submitted, seeking a total of €162 million in funding. 186 of these applications were for projects that were deemed invalid under the 2017 round of the programme that subsequently submitted corrected documents. These applications were assessed first, and approximately €7 million in allocations to 170 projects were announced on the 17th of January. And that, Deputy, is something that you sought as well as others, and that I think is something that was very well received by those applicants who would otherwise still be waiting for funding, and it's something we were glad to facilitate. Work is now underway in assessing the new 2018 applications. For the first time, applicants who have submitted incorrect documentation under this round will be given the opportunity to correct their application during the assessment period. That is something that many deputies, including Deputy Hayden, have raised in the past, and that's something that we were very glad to introduce into this new round, Lascon Corla, giving the volunteers mainly who apply for these sports capital grants an opportunity to have their applications fully assessed and not be invalidated. While there will be no undue delay in completing the assessment process, in view of the opportunity to correct documentation, the record number of applications received and the detailed information contained in each application, it is likely to take a number of months to have all applications assessed. Accordingly, I expect that it may be the third quarter of this year before the full set of allocations under this current round of the Sports Capital Programme are announced. However, there are a number of non-personal sports equipment grants within that number, and we do hope in the coming weeks to be able to make allocations to over 600 clubs who have applied for those grants, if possible. And that is something, again, which will be helpful to many clubs coming into the summer period. And in answer to the final aspect of Deputy Hayden's question, as soon as we make the final allocations in the autumn time, hopefully, under the 2018 round, we will carry out a full review of the 2018 round of the programme with a view to initiating the opening of the next round of the Sports Capital Programme, hopefully before the end of the year.
Deputy Hayden, 1 minute.
Thank the Minister for his response and for having an open door in relation to feedback from us in relation to how the scheme has worked and ways it can be improved, and definitely given an opportunity to those volunteers who've who've put forward the application and for some reason it was invalid, giving them an opportunity to rectify that is really important. So can you just clarify, Minister, how that will actually work? Will all clubs receive a letter to say whether they were valid or invalid, or is it only a club that had a problem with validity that will get a letter? How much time, when will those letters do you envisage start to issue? How much time will they have to rectify that issue? Obviously, if it's a title deed issue, I presume not all of them will be able to be rectified, but I presume the clubs will be given an opportunity to do so. And I note then that you say it'll be the third quarter of this year before we have the final decision. You might just expand for us exactly the grants that you think you might be able to allocate earlier. Is it purely for equipment as opposed to infrastructural projects? And you're saying you believe that those maybe be allocated in the next month or two?
I get the Minister.
Yes, so we have, of the total number of applications received, 635 of those were in respect of equipment only. So, for example, rowing clubs that may be looking for rowing boats, boxing clubs that may be looking for, punching bags, different things. You may also have GA clubs, soccer clubs that were looking for lawnmowers, gyms that are just looking for gym equipment. So those type of applications are what we would refer to as equipment-only applications. There are 635 of those. The total ask in respect of those 635, as far as I'm aware, is about €19 million value. And logistically, it would be possible for us to group those applications and have them in the next couple of weeks. So we hope to do that rather than those clubs having to wait with everybody else, because these are typically smaller applications. So we think that out of interest of trying to facilitate as many clubs as possible, as quickly as possible, we'll try to do that as soon as we can. And then in relation to the other grants and the other applications, the officials in the department hope to write to everybody at the same time if there are issues. So, for example, if a document is missing or if there's an inaccuracy, all of the things that previously would have invalidated an application, the applicants will be written to. There will be a set period given to those applicants to submit the corrected document or documents, as the case may be. And after that, the officials will reassess the applications. If they are then invalid, well, there's no more we can do given the logistics involved. But if they're then valid, they will be assessed with everybody else. And then, as we said, the applications, we hope, will be eligible for allocation of funding in the autumn time.
Final question.
Many thanks for that, Minister. So again, if you have a timeline as to when you expect to be in a position to have adjudicated on all applications, whether they're invalid or not, as to when clubs might expect that feedback. And also then, can I ask about the large-scale infrastructural grants? The closing date for applications is later this month in April. Obviously, there is the St Conleth's County Grounds in Newbridge. Newbridge or Nowhere is a place that became famous last year, and for very good reason, because the GAA didn't want us playing a very large championship game in our home ground. And the state of our stand in Newbridge is one that we're not proud of. We're very proud of our footballers and of our ladies footballers, camogie teams and hurling teams that play in St Conleth's Park, but our infrastructure could be much better. We need a large-scale infrastructural grant, as you're aware. When do you see a decision being made on those projects with the application date? Because I know Kildare GAA are putting in their application at present.
Yeah, so with invalid cases, I hope by early summer to have that dealt with, and I think that the window that's anticipated is 2 to 3 weeks for the correction of documentation, because otherwise we would be leading to a very prolonged application period and processing period. So we'll try to be as swift as possible with that particular element of the process. In relation to the large-scale sporting infrastructure fund, this is something that Minister Ross and I were very keen to have introduced, because our department is constantly approached with requests for funding that are larger than what is provided for under the traditional sports capital programme. And we're glad to say we have secured capital funding for the large-scale sporting infrastructure fund. We are currently receiving applications. The application deadline is April 17th, and after that we'll start processing the applications received. The initial feedback from officials in the Department of Sport is that that particular scheme is going to be very heavily oversubscribed, and that is traditionally a feature of the regular sports capital programme, that unfortunately the demand far outstrips the supply of funding available. But we will try to be as fair as possible to the applicants and try to be as strategic as possible in terms of the allocations of funding. And we know that there's pent-up demand there as well, given the difficult period that we're arising from still and the lack of investment that was there as a result of the economic crash. But we'll try to be as swift as possible in relation to freeing up the finance for we know what are very necessary sporting infrastructure projects all over the country.
Next